Welcome back. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. You know we love books here. Well, a new book makes the case that to understand the Supreme Court, you need to look beyond the sort of prototypical 6-3 conservative majority thing. Last Branch Standing argues the court is actually 3-3-3. What does that mean? Helpfully, the book's author, Sarah Isgur, joins me to explain. She's an editor at SCOTUSblog. Great to have you here. 3-3-3. What does that mean?
If all you think is that the court is a 6-3 partisan, it's no different than Congress, you'll get the cases wrong close to 90% of the time. And that's not just now, that's always been the case. You know, in the last 20 years, there's been a liberal justice in the majority over 90% of the time. Last term, the same number of cases had all the liberals in dissent. Fine, that's your ideological lineup. The same number of cases had all the liberals in the majority and conservatives in dissent. So it was 6-3 the other way. So I suggest, yes, ideology, it's different than politics, but legal methodology does make a difference. But there's also this way that the justices work that presidents don't even seem to think about, which is incrementalism, institutionalism, temperamentalism, if you will.
Right.
And so Gorsuch and Kavanaugh can be identically conservative, but they're only together 50% of the time. Why? They see their jobs as quite different on that other spectrum.
And that spectrum is what? When they talk about, yes, we were nominated by presidents who thought we would be conservatives. We identify ourselves in legal conversations as originalists, but yet they can come down on different sides of questions of law.
That's right. So Justice Gorsuch, I call him my YOLO libertarian justice. He doesn't care what the consequences of this decision are, in the sense that that's not his problem. Congress can make a new treaty with Native Americans. Americans can ratify an amendment to the Constitution. That's the way it's supposed to work. He's not supposed to take into account, whether the consequences are good or bad. Justice Kavanaugh, on the other hand, wants to, make a small change, look around, make sure everything's okay. Then we can make another change to the law. More thinking of it as a middle school group project. There may be 9 of us, but we turn in 1 diorama to our teacher.
What about the Chief Justice and Amy Coney Barrett?
So the Chief Justice and Barrett are incrementalists, institutionalists like Justice Kavanaugh. I would actually, again, you do have, no question, conservative and liberal justices. But Justice Gorsuch and Justice Jackson, far apart ideologically, are incredibly close together temperamentally on how they see the court. They are low institutionalists. Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Kagan, again, far apart, but very close in those institutionalist concerns. You'll see Justice Kagan often making 7-2 decisions on the court.
You have any sense what Justice Alito is going to do?
So difficult.
Lots of conversation in town.
Conversation.
And some of that can just be a conversation that chases itself and spins in a circle. Do you think there's anything to it that he could step down?
Nobody knows the answer to this but Justice Alito. The reason we're all talking about it is the most common time for a justice to step down is when a president of the party that appointed them is in office, and we are July 2nd before a midterm election. So that's why we're talking about him. I think the White House would really like that opening, so they want to signal, if you step down, we'll make sure it's someone who would continue your legacy. Keep an eye on Judge Andy Oldham of the Fifth Circuit, because he is a former Alito clerk. And so, more conversations about him might convince the justice that now is the right time. On the other hand, Justice Alito is having a good time on the court. He likes his job. He thinks it's important work. None of these guys want to step down. Hashtag life tenure.
No doubt. Justice Sotomayor, through the court, released a statement earlier this week, just yesterday, apologizing for something she said about Justice Kavanaugh in something that he had written about an immigration decision. How unusual is that? I mean, the whole part of that, the denunciation and the apology, talk about the temperament and some clashing.
Absolutely. Justice Sotomayor cares deeply about collegiality on the court, especially she has reached out after their hard confirmation hearings to Justices Kavanaugh and Barrett, wanting to make sure they felt welcome coming into the court. I call it the last branch standing, and this couldn't be a better example of that. How different does this feel than our political branches? Nobody pressured her to make this apology. The second she made those comments, I said, this is very unusual for a justice to comment kind of personally on another justice. And I said, but you know, sometimes we all say things that we sort of instantly regret. It is what we mean, but we don't want to say them publicly.
And what she implied was because of a quote-unquote privileged upbringing of Justice Kavanaugh, he didn't understand some of the underlying difficulties in a particular immigration matter, which was personal, not
personal.
legal.
That's right. And it is personal to her. She has talked about going back to chambers after a vote in conference and crying. Justice Kagan, of course, mentioned that, like, she doesn't cry, she punches the wall. All of the justices have very different personalities. And if you want to be able to predict the court, you've got to actually understand those personalities.
Sarah Isgur, the book, Last Branch Standing. I want to read the subtitle because it's kind of resonant for the show. A potentially surprising, occasionally witty journey inside the Supreme Court. Where have I heard something like that before? Anyway, thanks so much for being